If there's one thing that is consistent with VA disability claims process, it is that you will experience denials, most likely, especially if you're doing this process all by yourself. But just because you'll get a denial doesn't mean you shouldn't move forward with requesting or getting a rating or a disability that you have service connected. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do this, right? If you think that you have something that should be service connected, you just need to figure out what it is that you're missing and you need to press forward. This video is all about your rights to appeal a VA disability decision of a denial. And I know for those of you who haven't been in this process very long, you hear the word appeal and you think that's really confusing and complicated, and I don't know that I want to do that. And you're right, it is at the beginning, but I can promise you it's not as bad as you think. In fact, it's almost just like retaking a test in school. You go through the review, you found out which ones you missed, and you just recorrect them, and you get a better score. With the disability claims process, it's the same thing. You've already stressed over, submitting that initial disability claim. You found out that you didn't have everything that you needed, and the VA tells you in the denial letter that you're missing some things, and you just assess it, evaluate it, figure out if you have those things, if you can get those things, and then you go get those things. For the most part. Sometimes those decision letters are hard to read. Other times they're easier to read. I'm going to go through the 3 different options that you have if you get the denial. And really the main part of this that I hope you get out of it is I hope that I encourage you to not quit on something that you feel strongly about that should be part of your disability rating. So the first option, and it's one of my favorite because I made a lot of mistakes throughout this process, and I oftentimes forgot to include things or just didn't think that I really needed that type of evidence. But then as I read my denial letters, I found out that, okay, I probably do need that, and I learned. And so I use the supplemental claim process a lot. And in a nutshell, the supplemental claim process is simply just, you're going to resubmit your whole claim back to the VA, and you're going to have to add new and relevant evidence to that supplemental claim. I have submitted supplemental review requests back to the VA without putting relevant evidence in, and they have denied it. And it takes a while, right? You're looking at 3 to 4 months and you get a denial back and you didn't move the ball forward at all. So make sure what you're putting in is new and relevant. What is new and relevant? New and relevant would definitely be additional evidence that you had not submitted in the past. Make sure that you didn't submit it. New and relevant could be a buddy letter from a friend or a spouse or a coworker, something that details in that buddy letter or that statement that add to what you're trying to do. If it comes back as denied for service connection, sending in a statement from your spouse, adding in the different symptoms you experience it may be considered new and relevant. I don't know that it would really be relevant because you're lacking service connection. So you need to submit something that says, like, hey, look, my friend here was injured while on active duty orders. Here's what I remember happening. Here's my information, and that's what your friend would submit, or someone that served with you. That would be new and relevant evidence to a service connection denial, and that would be beneficial, right? If that's the avenue that you wanted to pursue for direct service connection. Other things that you can include, and that I would almost always recommend, is maybe a personal statement, that maybe helps them understand the facts better. I almost encourage, even if you submitted a personal statement the first time, if you're like submitting a buddy letter and that buddy letter is throwing it in there, I'd almost submit the personal letter. Hey, I'm submitting a supplemental appeal. I'm requesting you to review the additional new and relevant evidence that I've submitted. That new and relevant evidence is a statement from a friend of mine that served with me, from whatever year to whatever year. During that time, I was injured, and my friend, observed it, and he tells his side of the story and how that works, and that may help the VA decide to help you out. Another option in the supplemental appeal process is to talk to either your doctor, and hopefully you already did this, but if you didn't, go get a real Nexus by talking to your personal doctor and having them explain the how this is connected to service, and then you can upload that as new and relevant evidence. Again, you could do a personal statement to say, hey, I'm submitting this, please don't forget to review this, just because they could forget, and that's a good reminder. I will tell you that sometimes personal doctors, when you're going for direct service connection with not a secondary, it could be, it could get kicked back, even in a supplemental appeal. You don't want your doctor to just willy-nilly say yeah, this is service connected, at least as likely as not, or more likely than not, because they need to articulate their reasoning behind it. And sometimes personal doctors don't necessarily understand that. I think you could find it helpful by doing some research ahead of time and maybe talking it out with your doctor and really getting them to understand what the process is, so that they understand what the VA requires. And you want it to be strong evidence, and you don't just want it to be a statement. So if you find yourself in that position, go for a Nexus letter from a medical professional that understands VA disability claims. They understand how to review your medical records. They understand evidence. They understand what could truly and righteously be service connection based on whether it's a secondary condition or whether it's direct service connection. I do have a website that has free access for you, doctors, medical professionals that will write these things, and all you have to do is reach out to them. Most of them are free consultations. They have their own websites, but you can go on mine, find a link to theirs, click over to theirs, take a look at what they have, what they offer, look at their specialties, make sure that it's the right doctor for your condition, and see how that works for you. But that's out there. So that's your supplemental claim. And like I said, that's my favorite one, because it's almost like a mystery, although I hate mysteries that take a year to solve. But if you know what you need in that supplemental claim based on what your denial letter says, and you can get that new and relevant evidence, submit that supplemental claim, and I think you'll be surprised that you may win those. The next one is a higher level review. Now, a higher level review, I have a little bit of, I like the higher level review, but I have my concerns about it just based on some previous experiences. But with a higher level review, you don't have to do anything really. Just click that you want a higher level review, send it off. They're going to do it. They're going to send this to a more experienced or a senior rater, and that's the good thing about the higher level review is, you may have a new VA rater on the first time around. They're cutting their teeth. They're getting experience. They're doing their OJT. They mess up, right? And it should go through a process, so they should catch it. But sometimes it doesn't work. But you get that higher level review. You get someone new that's been doing this for a little while. You get someone that's been doing this for a little while, and your decision may come out a little bit stronger. I would not submit a higher level review if the denial letter says you are missing some pretty credible evidence that you just didn't have in there. Because the higher level review is going to take longer, and you're going to get another denial, and then you're going to have to do a supplemental claim. And I don't want you to have to go through additional scrutiny or additional time frames to get that. But one thing that I don't like about the higher level review is really isn't anywhere to explain where the rater went wrong. And I wish the VA would add that too, because some of you guys have been going through this a while, and you're like, hey, they messed this up. They didn't review this evidence. In my case, evidence wasn't reviewed that was in there, and I've had friends that have had the same experience. They just forgot to review evidence, or they overlooked it, or they looked only at the CMP exam. They were rushing for whatever reason. And if you could write in there hey, I looked at all the evidence that was reviewed by the rater and they forgot to review my doctor's evidence or whatever. And then that way that higher level review rater can look at it and say, yeah, you're right, like they didn't. And they look at it, they review it, and they say, boom, done. And I mean, that could be more efficient for the government as well. So I wish that they did do that. I have noticed that you can type in like a quick sentence in there. It's not what it's there for. I think it's, you're typing in like what the condition was, but like, you can throw in a good 6 or 7 words to say like, hey, check this, which in your favor, it might make it quicker, but that's not what that's designed for. Higher level review is designed for someone just to get another look at it and send it forward. So a higher level review is there for you, but that's only if you know that this one should have been approved. I wouldn't waste my time on this if you didn't. Now, with these two options, you could pretty much do these back and forth, keep them going and going and going, but you must do it within 1 year of that denial decision. So that's very important. You got 1 year to get it back to them. So what I would, but one scenario here is you could send the higher level review in if you thought you had everything, and maybe you get a decision letter back from senior rater that's a little bit more information to help you come up with your next step. And then maybe they tell you like you just don't have a Nexus, and maybe at that point you're going to my website and you're grabbing a doctor that can help you get that Nexus, or you're going to your personal doctor and you're making that work, and you're doing a supplemental appeal. But you can't send that up in a higher level review. So for the higher level reviews, you could do them one time, and then you have to do a supplemental review. Okay. But then you can go back to the higher level review. So you can keep kind of going back and forth and doing that. But you're only getting a year from each time the decision is denied. And I want you to be successful at this. So I do suggest getting with a VSO on this, right? Or finding a friend that's just done this a little while longer, or ask me on the comments section, and I love replying to comments and questions. But sometimes I don't have all the information, so I feel funny giving a real advice because I don't have all the information. So I suggest finding somebody that's done it and really trying to get put some brain power into this, get a couple heads thinking about it, and then come up with a good strategy. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is an appeal to the board. You could submit an appeal to the board at any time. It's within 1 year, obviously. But they essentially have like 3 different options in that appeal to the board. You can appeal to like have additional evidence submitted, which is kind of like what we did with the supplemental claim. You can have a hearing where you go, you'll do it by Zoom, or I'm guessing you could do it in person too, and you'll kind of state your case. I've thought about doing that before, but I've had experience with just the supplementals and the higher level reviews that I haven't had to go that route. And then the third one is just have the board appeal your claim based on the evidence you've already submitted, kind of like a higher level review, but this time it's going to be like a veterans law judge. So just some things to remember too. And I'm getting all this stuff right off the VA website, so if you're better at reading, go check it out. I'll put a link to the description down below. Your appeal is going to be reviewed by a veterans law judge. So it's not like a VA rater or senior rater. It's going to be an actual law judge. It's going to be an attorney. It's going to be someone that's going to really look at this in a critical manner. And because of that, it might be better to get an attorney for this type of thing, or some sort of representative that's done this a couple times. You can submit your evidence to the VA within 90 days following the submission of your form that you're going to send up, so you can add that new evidence. So you might have a little more time, but remember there's a deadline there, and you don't want to miss that deadline, because if you get stuck in that system and it just keeps rotating, it won't be good for you. You can also, if you decide to have that hearing, you can you're going to be scheduled for one. And you or your representative, your VSO, whoever you're using to represent you, can submit evidence at or within 90 days following that hearing. So you probably won't get a decision. You're not going to get a decision right then and there. You can add additional evidence in there based on how that hearing goes. And so that's good. But in my opinion, I think hitting the higher level reviews and supplemental claims probably easier for you at first, especially if you're working with a VSO. Those are going to be quicker in most cases. I hear that these appeals to the board can take quite a bit of time, unless you're doing like the direct review, which I think will be a little bit quicker. But I just feel like a lot of these can be really simply dealt with in a quick and expedient manner. Unless you have a really complex claim where you're really, trying to connect something to your service that, maybe isn't, maybe there's not a lot of, evidence out there to support it. And maybe it does need to be argued by an attorney. And in those cases, like I do suggest getting an attorney. I know that's going to cost a little bit out of your pocket, but it won't necessarily come out of your pocket. It's going to come from back pay. But if you're stuck in that spot and you can't, and the supplemental and the higher levels just aren't working, but you're at your last resort, try that, see what happens. Listen, I hope that helps you out. Remember, supplemental appeals and higher level reviews, those are my go-to. That's how I like to try and tackle this problem. But the Board of Appeals is there for you as well. I wish you nothing but the best of luck in this process and this journey. And really the main thing is just don't put your head down. Just stay moving forward and get the rating that you deserve, so that you'll feel good about it.